All right, check 1, 2. Just making sure you can see me and hear me okay. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining me today. What we're going to be talking about today in this workshop is we're going to be talking about 3 different ways to approach solos, pre-constructed cover song solos, right? There's 3 different ways we're going to approach these. And this just goes along with some of the other things we've been talking about up to this point, and this is all sort of celebrating the release of my guitar course, Guitar Solos, which is available on guitarzoom.com. So if you're interested, go ahead and head over to guitarzoom.com, check out that, and see if it's something you're interested in. So basically, what we have are 3 different ways we can approach solos. Now, the thing about playing songs, I get this question all the time about learning songs note for note. Okay, we can get as close as we can to learning the song note for note. What we are doing is we're trying to learn a particular piece of music off a particular album, right? So let's say we were trying to learn, whatever the song is, the guitar solo for Highway to Hell, off Highway to Hell by AC/DC. Okay, so we're trying to replicate that. That's great, but if you listen to other live versions of Highway to Hell, is the solo exactly the same as it was on the album version? And the chances are almost never, right? There's going to be something that's a little bit different, some nuance. It might be subtle. It might be entirely different. It just depends. It depends on the artist. It depends on, the band. Certainly the song can make a difference, right? All these things. And so, being my age, I'm 50 now. When I grew up, you learned songs by ear. So you got as close as you could, but, there was still an element of you that existed within the learning of that song because of the way you thought about what the guitar looked like and, the way you learned things and how things sounded and all that kind of thing made a difference. So along the way, you started developing kind of your own style, hopefully anyway, so you could improvise. Like that was one of the things you learn how to do. There's an art to improvisation, right? It's not like everybody can improvise really well. It takes a lot of time and a lot of patience, but in the same respect, it takes a lot of time and a lot of patience to learn something note for note. I just want you to understand that note for note is kind of a weird term because oftentimes, depending on the band and the style of music that you're playing, note for note can only be so close, because there are things about the song that shift in reality. Again, it depends on the style of music, though, right? So we do the best we can. We get as close as we can. Plus, we have limitations. Like if you think about it, even if you're a great player, if you try and take a really great player like Steve Vai, right, and you try and have him replicate exactly note for note a song by B.B. King, I don't think it's going to happen. He could get very close, but I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think every single nuance of that entire song is going to sound like B.B. King. It's still going to sound like Steve Vai no matter what he does. Okay? So it's important to understand that. If you hear any squawking in the background, it's our guinea pigs, just so you know. Okay? My wife just walked by, and now they're squawking, and that's what's happening. So anyway, let me keep going here. So my take on it is you get as close as you can to replicating the song in a comfortable way that suits your needs, right? So if you're learning how to play whatever, you're learning how to play that riff, right? And there's a bunch of other stuff to the song. But if you go back and you listen to versions of that by Randy Rhoads, for instance, it's not like every single time he plays everything, it's exactly the same as the album. It's not. He's taking the liberty of changing certain things because he chooses to. Now, we can choose to as well. If you go back and you listen to, any of Ozzy's players, from Zakk Wylde to Jake E. Lee to, whoever it is that you enjoy, and you listen to Gus G., whoever it might be, and you listen to them play, it's never exactly like the album. It's going to be close, right? So, and again, I'm not saying you should slough off or you should slack your way through something. I'm saying that you are still you. At the end of the day, your approach still really matters on how you're going to play these things. So if we take and look at the solos to songs, you might have a song where the solo, really, you want to try and replicate that solo. Let's say, like, there are certain iconic solos in my brain, like While My Guitar Gently Weeps. Now, I'm a metal guy and I love metal, but there are just certain solos that stand out, like While My Guitar Gently Weeps. Still Got the Blues by Gary Moore. Purple Rain, right? There are certain songs that Comfortably Numb. It's not like I'm the biggest David Gilmour or Pink Floyd fan in the world. I'm not, but I enjoy them. But that solo is absolutely iconic. And another one would very much be Crazy Train. Now, I've heard Crazy Train a million times. I'm sick of hearing Crazy Train, and I'm sure you are too. But that doesn't change the fact that for me, it's an iconic song, especially for me as a kid. And the solo was absolutely iconic. I'm going to try and treat maybe Crazy Train solo as religiously as I can to make it as accurate as I can. I'm still not going to get exact because there's just little tweaky things about that solo that I just kind of do my own thing. So let me talk about the 3 ways to approach a solo. One is you're going to try and learn the solo note for note as best as you can. It's going to try and, maybe the bend isn't exactly there, or there's a certain lick that's a little bit different than another one or something like that. Or maybe you nailed it. Maybe it's a solo that really you are in tune with and you pretty much have it locked in. That's great. That's one way. The other way is, over on this other side, is that you're going to improvise the solo, right? Maybe it's a solo that you don't really care about. It's not an iconic thing for you. You just want to jam it. You just want to have some fun, which for me was a lot of AC/DC tunes. As much as I love Black Sabbath, there were certain Sabbath tunes that, I would play in bands, and I just enjoyed going off on them. I wasn't really trying to replicate the solos. I just wanted to improvise and do my own thing. That's over here. And then in the center, you've got plotting points, okay, or key riffs that you're going to try and implement. So what you're doing is you're taking some of the best parts from over here that you really think are important and necessary, and you're adding them here, and then in between those, you're weaving your own playing style, your own things in between those. And these are the 3 worlds that you live in, and most players do if you play for a living. Okay? Now, if you're sitting, if you've never played in a band and you've never jammed with other people and that sort of thing, these rules can still apply. But believe me, they change dramatically when you start getting out and you play in bands. Even your own songs, even songs that you've written, sometimes the songs are absolutely iconic, or the solos, I should say. And sometimes the songs or the solos are, they're fine, or whatever. But you're going to do your own thing at that point, or you're going to plot certain elements and then you're going to jam in between. So if we were looking at, and I'm just using Crazy Train as an example because I was talking about it before, but we start off with this. Now, most people probably would gravitate to maybe using that section because it really is an iconic part of that solo. But if we think about the song, we're in the key of F sharp minor. So would you have to do that? Well, that's up to you, right? More up to you than anybody else, even though you might get somebody over here that says, you didn't play the solo correctly. And, I don't even want to get into that whole thing. But, or somebody over here that's just enjoying you rocking out, just doing your thing, right? This is where you need to live. Now, if you try and play that particular lick and you're not capable, maybe you're not ready technically to be able to do that. Well, okay, you got a couple choices to make. One is you practice it and you develop it and you implement it and you start using it. Or you go, well, listen, I've got a gig this Saturday, and I'm just using this song as an example. It could be any song, okay? I've got a gig this Saturday. We decided to do this song, and I've started learning it, and oh crap, there's a part of this solo that I cannot do, which we've all been there. Like if all of a sudden somebody throws a really complex song at you, and you're gigging, or you've been hired by a band to go on tour, and you've got 2 weeks to get ready and learn their entire, set, and you're not really comfortable with everything, or you don't really know their stuff that well, or a million different reasons, okay? Again, this is the real world that we're dealing with here. We don't always get 6 months to try and learn things. Sometimes you just got to figure it out, right? So you might work on that and develop it. If you don't have enough time or you're just not there technically, you might decide to do something else, right? So I think about that lick as probably pretty iconic. Then we come off that. And again, that's a really melodic part. But the next lick really is irrelevant to me, and I'm just talking personally. You might go, no, you really need to learn that. But for me, coming down this... whatever I'm going to do... whatever I decide to do there is fine. Okay, and then you lead into the, you might tap that. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you could approach something like that. You might not even play that. You might just be going off doing your own thing at that point. So that was the whole point of this conversation, is to understand that when you learn solos, even if we weren't looking at iconic solos, even if we were just looking at solos by me, right? Or solos by somebody, somebody else that you watch on YouTube, or you buy a guitar course or whatever, or you're just learning a riff or a lick. Maybe you're just learning a lick from a song or, an artist that you like out there. And the lick doesn't really fit the comfortable element that you are, the way that you play, if that makes sense. You've learned the lick, but really if you use this finger, or you change this note, or you played it this certain way instead, it just feels more natural to you. So again, you have two choices to make. Either you force that, and I'm not saying that negatively, you force that idea and you change the way that you play to become something new, which is fine, which is great, right? Or you bend this thing to fit into the way that you play, the comfortable place that you are, and you use that in your playing, okay? There's nothing wrong with that either. That's how you develop your own sense of self. Because again, if I go back to Steve Vai, when you hear Steve Vai play over just about anything, you hear Steve Vai. It doesn't matter if it's a song by somebody else or something, you still hear all the Vai-ness, if that's a word, it's a new word, in that solo and in that whole song. And he's not apologizing for that. That's who he is. That's the way he plays. So he's not trying to become somebody else. He's trying to just do what he does in different situations that he finds himself in. So I just want you to think about that a little bit when you're learning songs, when you're learning solos by other people, or even just being educated in a video or a lesson or a song that you're learning or whatever it might be, and you come across a particular thing and you go, well, what do I do with this? Do I play it that way, or do I do something else with it? And again, I can't answer that for you, but I just want you to know that both are very valid, and they both exist out there. And again, we look at some of the icons that we listen to and we hear them do it all the time, but it's okay with them because they wrote the song, even though they haven't played it that way from the actual album version in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, who knows, right? It changes. But we're trying to focus on just that one studio version. And again, nothing wrong with that. But there's nothing wrong with changing it either and morphing it into something that fits your style as well. So anyway, hopefully that helps you a little bit. So take care. Do me a favor if you can. Please leave a comment for me, and I'll try and read that a little bit later. And if you've got any words of advice, please leave those as well. I love to see people talking and engaging in conversation that's positive and helps each other out. And again, subscribe if you haven't already, and go check out guitar solos at guitarzoom.com and see if that's a course that might help you a little bit in your playing.